Welcome to episode 3 of The Lower Shelf, where complex issues meet common sense answers. My name is Autumn Keeling, and I'll introduce each new episode. Today, Dr. John Shultz and Jacob Hanson continue their conversation about financial stewardship and address how to dump debt. Now, let's get into the episode.
Hello, my name is John Shultz, and I serve as the pastor of First Baptist Church, McClenny, Florida. I want to welcome you to another episode of The Lower Shelf, where complex problems meet common sense answers. Co-hosting with me is Jacob Hanson. Jacob is our next-gen pastor at First Baptist. Today we're going to continue to pull the thread in another area of finances. We're going to focus in on the area of debt and how we get out of debt. First, I would like to differentiate between debt and ongoing weekly or monthly expenses. For our conversation today, debt is a financial obligation that you have for a good or an item such as credit cards, a car, home mortgage, student loans, payday loans, store cards, etc. Normally, these debts have a minimum payment associated to them and an interest rate that is part of that debt. I really feel like it's the hope of the credit card companies that you will not pay them off, or that you'll only pay the monthly minimums, which it will take you years to be able to pay off. According to Experian, the average credit card debt is between $7,000 and $10,000 as of July 2025. This debt is increasing year to year because of increasing costs of living and other things, people not wanting to delay the gratification and want to swipe or pay or click or whatever to be able to get what they want. According to debt.org, American household debt is on a relentless upward trajectory. It was at a record $18.2 trillion by 2025, up $4.6 trillion since 2019. It includes $12.8 trillion owed in mortgages, $1.6 trillion in auto loans, $1.63 trillion on student loans, $1.18 trillion in credit card debt. One of the things that's very troubling is the delinquency rates. Accounts that are 30 days or more behind payment are also on the rise, with 4.3% of debt in some stage of delinquency. Ramsey Solutions is a place that you can look towards to be able to help with financial planning. They say that the average student loan debt is about $39,000. I think that may be a bit low, but that's what they say the average is. I want to be open with you guys and being able to say particular things, but I want to turn this over to Jacob. I know that that's a lot of data, but what do you think that the data are telling our people, regardless of the age?
Sure, yeah. Definitely a lot of data, but it's very true. And I think it hits home for a majority of our listeners. And we just see through the information we've looked at that, like you said, Pastor, regardless of the age, folks are experiencing debt, and that is not coming down. It's rising. And so as we look at if we were to look at the trajectory of that debt, it just continues to climb and climb as people get further and further into debt. And so I know sometimes there may be a stereotype towards millennials and younger families that they are in more debt than other people, but that's just not true. When you look at the data, a wide range of folks, regardless of what generation or age group they come from, they are facing significant amounts of debt.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I don't think that there's an age area that we can say is dramatically more than the other when it comes to debt. And I also want full disclosure. Pam and I operated for years having a lot of debt, and it was, we would call it kind of normal debt. It was car loans, home mortgages, gas cards, Visa, all those things. We didn't have student debt like many people, many of our listeners will have. And I just want to remind you that student loan debt won't go away. You can't bankruptcy that thing away. You have to either pay it off or die. But we got tired of living paycheck to paycheck, and we got a plan. Jacob, let me ask you a question. Why do you think it is so easy to get in debt and stay that way?
Sure. Yeah, I think for some people, especially in the younger. Again, we can't stereotype in terms of age groups, but I think some people see the things that other people that they hang around, or folks in their stage of life, their age and stage of life, they see the things they have. They see the larger house, they see the larger boat, they see the larger activities, the larger parties, whatever the case is, and man, they almost get jealous of that, and they desire to have those things, and so they say, by any means necessary, I'm going to have what they have. And as Pastor has shared before, it's okay to have stuff, but it's not okay to let stuff have us. And so I think that's one area where people get into debt. They're trying to keep up with other people that they see have different things going on in their life. Another thing I would say, too, is there are so many places that will bombard you and give you opportunities to open lines of credit, to open credit cards, such that if you are delinquent or you are in debt in one place, okay, I can avoid that, and I can go to another place, and I can now open another credit card, and I can get into further debt with that place. And it just keeps snowballing and growing and growing and growing. And so I think that's another area, just the wide accessibility to being able to open new lines of credit and new ways to get into debt just grows.
Yeah, well, I'd agree with that. And I'd agree as well that sometimes people will go through a consolidation, and I think it is a consolidation because the belief is you can consolidate all of your debt into one place. And it does, in some cases, make the single payment easier than multiple payments and all of that, but you haven't learned the practice. There are people that do that more than one time because they haven't changed the discipline. You know what? If you're tired of living paycheck to paycheck and want to get a plan that will help you to slowly get out of debt, you can do like many, many people have done. The plan I'm going to propose to you is from Ramsey Solutions. You can search for Ramsey Solutions Debt Snowball and begin there. I also want to preface this by saying that if you enter into the debt snowball, before you do that, I want to urge you to begin working on a budget. And you have at least $1,000 saved in a very beginning emergency fund. This $1,000 will help you avoid jumping back into debt as you begin your debt-free journey in the event that anything happens. Because the first thing that we do often when an emergency happens, if we don't have an emergency fund, is we'll go back to that habit that we had before, pulling out the credit card, using it to pay for it, and it begins that snowball in the opposite direction. One more thing is this. If impulse purchasing online or credit cards or whatever is your weak spot, man, set up some guardrails that will cause you to think before you click, tap, or swipe. Jacob, how long have you and Jade been married?
3 years.
3 years. Wow. So which of you is the spender?
I think a lot of folks can probably guess that right off the bat, but that's me. I am the spender. Jade is certainly the saver in our marriage.
Is limiting debt an area where both of you have learned or things that you're learning together as a married couple?
Sure, yeah. One of the greatest influences for us before we got married was doing premarital counseling with a pastor in our lives who just invested into us. And one of those activities that we did when we went through premarital counseling was looking at all of our income and then all of our debt and our regular expenses. And that was just a great launching pad and starting point for us as we were bringing all of our finances, both of our lives together. We saw where we were, and we saw ways that we could tackle debt. And so, yes, that's something that we have done throughout our marriage, and we try to keep that in check. We certainly do not go into unnecessary debt. I'll full transparency, we do have a credit card, but we make sure we pay that off whatever we use it for. The other thing is we bought a vehicle. We added a vehicle to our family, but we paid cash. And so we made sure we could save up cash, and we paid cash for that. So those are some of those practical ways that we've avoided debt in our family. The other thing I'll say too is we treat our debt bills exactly like that, as bills. Each paycheck we pull some money aside, we set that aside for those, and we don't touch it. We treat it like we cannot touch this, and so we leave it set aside and earmarked for going towards auto payments and things like that.
Yeah, I'd just say this, the ability for you to maintain that kind of a discipline as long as you possibly can, because there are things that if we will save for, we can purchase with cash. Being able to purchase a good used vehicle and not having a payment history makes that vehicle easier and more fun to drive. It sure does. So let's just jump right into the plan that I propose. I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to ask you to gather together all of the places that you have for your total debt. That's everything but your home, and I want you to write them down. When you write it down, I want you to include the name of the debt, the monthly payment, the interest rate, and the total balance for that item. Then compile the whole list of your debt. I think that most of you will be amazed at when you see that bottom line and you add that total up. I have done this so many times with people, and they were shocked when they see all of their debt. Now, this isn't your weekly, monthly expenses like utility bills and stuff like that. This is debt. Now, after you do that, I want you to take that monthly debt and look at the lowest total balance item that's there. You'll scan that list. And what I want you to do is I want you to put that right at the top of the list. You're making a brand new list, and on and on and on. When you go down the list, you take the least amount of total debt on an individual line item. Like, let's say your car, you only had $3,000 and it was paid off. The next one that you would see as far total amount is $5,000. That would be next. And then whatever you have all the way down through the line, you make a new list and you put those in that particular order. And what I'm going to share with you is a plan that some people may disagree with, because there are those that say you need to take the highest or the lowest interest rate and be able to manipulate it with this. I'm just going to share a plan with you that's worked for us and many others. Your next step is to begin the process of paying off that first debt line. Maybe it's a car that you own $1,500 on, and that's the lowest amount of debt line item that you have. So you're putting a plan together. You have a car payment, but there may be ways for you to funnel additional money towards that to pay that off early. You may have to get an additional job. You may have to suspend paying additional toward other line items that you're trying to pay off earlier to be able to focus in on this number one debt that you have. After you pay off that first debt, you take that payment from debt number one and you apply that to debt number two along with the current payment. And any other way that you can lever any additional income at this point, you lever it at debt number two. When you pay that off, you repeat the process until everything is paid off but your house if you have a home mortgage. You know, the surprising thing, the normal household gets serious about this can pay off their debt in between 2 and 2.5 years of everything but the home, depending on their income. Many people will look at additional jobs or income sources during this time. When you get laser focused to get out of debt, you can do this. Jacob, how do you feel that it could impact all of a family if the children were to see their parents focused on this area and then they're explaining to them the reasons why?
Sure. Brother, you said it there. We've got to begin with why. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this together as a family? Why are there certain sacrifices that in this season of our family's life we're making in order to set us up for a better financial future? One thing I would begin by saying really is a word of caution, that you do not, as parents, as families, you do not want to cause or provoke anxiety within your kids about finances, because you are discipling them how they're going to view and look and use their financial resources. And so I would just give a word of caution to our families that don't do it in such a way that it causes anxiety with your children, and they see mom and dad or they see their family stressed out about finances because there's money issues. Don't do that as best as you can. What I would say, though, is you certainly do need to urge them and encourage them and show them why we are managing our money a certain way and how we're using it to get out of debt in a healthy way. Because, again, you are going to model the financial future for your children. And so, again, we've said on previous podcasts, just pressing that importance there, because they are being discipled through all of the variety of means that they use, through their electronics, through social media, through their friends, through even other families that they go and they spend time with. They're seeing how they manage money. And so families, you have the ability to be the front lines of teaching them what debt is, how you can use it for good things, but then also how you can use your finances and in a healthy way and in a faithful way to get out of that debt.
Yeah, I think that's a good word. There are products that are out there for parents to be able to equip their children even at an early age. Ramsey Solutions has a good one. Smart Money Kids is a good one that helps them to learn the area of saving as well, and then using their money to be able to purchase things that they want. I think there's probably a lot of peer pressure that kids put on their parents, especially when it comes to mobile devices and a variety of things. In parents, this is a conversation of the why, the delaying the gratification in order to be able to not do what we could do now, to be able for us to be able to live and give and invest in others like we'd like to be able to do later. And I think there's a lot of learning and a lot of why are we not going to Disney this year? Why are we not doing these things? Because we're going to be laser focused to be out of debt, and that's going to release a lot of opportunities for us to be able to do things that right now we could do, but we're delaying that gratification. That's also another teaching point that often is one that's difficult in today's society, and that is delaying the gratification in order to be able to gain the reward later. When you're able to live a debt-free life of everything but your home, I can tell you it is a liberating feeling. It really is. You are no longer slave to the lender. You can move, you can do a variety of things. But what I'd say with you is that you can also move on to the next steps. If you're doing the Ramsey Solutions plan after you dump debt, that next step is to be able to save for a fully funded emergency fund. And what that is that's 6 months of operating expenses that you've put together and saved. And what a wonderful place that is to have that kind of a savings together in the event that you would get ill and you would get short-term disability, but that's only a percentage of your income, or you don't have short-term disability and you're wondering how are we going to make it. If you've got 6 months of operating expenses in the bank, it takes a lot of pressure away from you and the family if you do that. If you've never done it or you've never gone through that process, man, I'd encourage you to be able to do that. If you're here today and you follow this plan and 2 years later or 2.5 years later, you do this, man, I want you to do something. I want you to celebrate it. I want you to celebrate. This is a major accomplishment because you will have done something that people talk about but will never do. And that's learning to live within your means and live debt-free of everything but your home. If you want to learn more about the process, you can go to RamseySolutions.com. And you know what? If you begin this process, you can change the direction of handling money and not allowing money to handle you. Jacob, do you have any other words to share before we bring this to a close?
No, thank you, brother. Been a great conversation. Good.
Well, next time we're going to have some fun. We're going to have a special guest, Dr. Rick Wheeler, who is the president and CEO of Florida Baptist Financial Services, will be here as we examine estate planning, wills, investing, a variety of services that Florida Baptist Financial Services provides that some of you may not even be aware of that are out there, that are individuals and maybe even churches, and you may be able to learn something to help you to further your plan or as a church or an individual. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you'll join us again for another episode of The Lower Shelf.
We hope that today's episode has encouraged you in your walk with Christ. The Lower Shelf is a ministry of First Baptist Church of McClenny. To learn more about First Baptist Church of McClenny, visit fbcmac.com, and you can also follow our ministry on Facebook and Instagram. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks for spending time with us on The Lower Shelf.